Yeah, alright, I'm late to the party. I should have watched this months ago when Bill told me to. But I'm not the only one who's late, and that's why we're here. Now, I'm gonna start off exactly how Fire Force does and cover originality. The mix of firefighting and religion with spontaneous human combustion as the driving concept is downright genius. I mean, even with 1,000 years, I don't think many people would mix those two ideas. But this is very important to how special the anime feels right away. Not just because you've never seen such a mix before, but because they're such a complementary pair when you bring ordinary people into it. Spontaneous human combustion is wacky, but it's a sad fact of life in the Fire Force world, and it just happens when it's your time. But you don't just explode or burn alive, but turn into an infernal, a human-like pyro-fueled menace that's lost its sensibilities and causes havoc. And the only way to stop one is to take out its heart through the new, hardened, and fiery exterior. And that's where this concept really gets some power from invoking and bringing in these religious elements. I mean, these are just regular, everyday people who are losing their lives just like that. And having a nun be part of the team, saying prayers as her only job, really brings that note back down to home and shows how important and personal this issue of spontaneous human combustion really is, despite it sounding somewhat ridiculous. It's something that just wouldn't happen without that religious influence, and it ends these badass fights on a more somber note, kind of similar to Tanjiro showing respect for demons in Demon Slayer. And while we're talking about fights, it's everyone's favorite part of modern anime impressions. We get to say how good something looks. Now, you've been looking at it already, so I don't need to cover this in detail, but it doesn't hurt to draw attention to some aspects, like the smooth, dynamic flow of action, or the sparring use of time manipulation to draw emphasis within fights. It gives it that certain punchy quality where you just really feel every hit, or at least feel like you feel every hit. Words are hard. I will say though, they do suffer from a bit of Dragon Ball Z syndrome, where characters stand and watch instead of fighting at once. Not all the time, they do work together and have some pretty good incorporated action scenes, but it also has that why did they let the opponent charge their attack quality. That being said, this sometimes separated nature has a clear positive though, letting each character's additions to the combat stand out and really shine since they all have a unique take to bring to the table. The more intense moments like fights also make good use of abstraction, like Shinra recalling his past and having the overtly mean characters be simple wispy shadows or stark colored lips, or the scattered and rough lines used in the fires. They're good visual backings for the emotions they're trying to pull out, like the confusion or nervousness of a fire from these rapid lines. They're some of the best touches, and having this double duty is something that I'll never not call out because it's just so smart having elements do multiple things in your animation. Now, along the same lines is actually the uniform design they use. They each have small touches for distinction and personality, but their outfits are really just firefighter gear. And I love that touch of realism where most anime see people fighting in the least fitting adornments. There's a real sense of danger when they're wearing something that's worn in real life in some of the most dangerous situations possible. This also goes with the grounding provided by the religious concept. While it may not be as standout or badass as some designs, it does a lot more for the show. Plus, there aren't many anime out there that have used firefighter gear, so it's not like they're unrecognizable anyway. This subtle tact comes up again in the later fight, where Shinra launches himself at the Infernal. He's a third generation pyrokinetic, meaning he has some sort of control over fire at its bare bones explanation. In his case, he can create flames from the soles of his feet, letting him essentially fly around or accelerate himself to an extreme degree. Now this means one of the easiest ways he can maneuver in midair is backwards, just from how the body works. And they don't shy away from having him move this way. Again, it's less likely to get slapped on a poster, it doesn't look badass, but in the end they pull it back to that, and it makes everything just the right amount of consequential that he can't manipulate himself in every way, and it actually depends on previous twists and turns. It makes everything feel a little more important. As an anime first episode though, it is subject to a normal pitfall, which is somewhat ham-fisted expositional flashbacks. Shinra, because of his powers and backstory, was dubbed as a devil from a young age. His younger brother and mother died when their house burned down, something which was believed to be his fault by everyone because of his powers, although he reveals this was due to some other presence in the fire, and this becomes his motivation for joining the Fire Force. His grandmother is exceptionally mean to him. His mom is pretty much the ideal mom trope in anime, and those bullying him are quite overt and cartoonish in what they're saying and how they look. Now, hidden within these more common elements, though, are some nice details, like the abstractions we already talked about in those gossiping about him, and some non-callouts as well, things they just drop in there but don't make a direct callout to. Like when he's standing in this burnt rubble of his home, and the only person standing with him like a positive influence is a Fire Force member seen by the distinctive blue stripes. And it's not even from saying anything, it's just from him having this lack of saying anything where everyone else is saying terrible things about him. It really helps drive this motivation for him home. It makes his motivation feel more real, seeing that they were the only ones to see him as something more than just a devil, even if they didn't say anything. Now, I never take much off due to standard elements in these types of scenes because you do want to establish motivation and start development ASAP, but they are present. However, establishing this motivation early lets us see some positive possibilities. His motivation is tied pretty much 100% with this new job, meaning the plot is much more likely to stay on a nice, concise course. Then the nature of the job, being a firefighter and having them called out to individual scenes, means it can be almost psychopathian, having developmental calls eventually leading into the main plotline once it's ready without breaking the established flow. These possibilities would complement the already well done pacing with lines or events put in a good order to introduce the concept. I mean, opening on a fight and having Shinra meet his team there and then using his powers in a short moment takes minutes off the introductions had these things been separated. We get the groundwork for nearly everything in the first 4 minutes, letting the rest of the episode move on more effectively. For example, whenever he sets out to fight the Infernal, he remarks, "You must be in pain," letting us know this is something unintentional and somber, and then providing a base for the prayer that comes very soon after, and then that in turn forwards the concept and motivations for the whole squad. It's a quite well calculated flow of events to craft an episode that feels just right, not rushed or packed in too tight. Hey, quick plug, so I make tons of other videos like discussions, in addition to reviews, first impressions, and comedy videos, all about the anime you love. Consider subscribing for more in the future, or checking out a few other videos on anything from utter classics to modern hits. Also, I have a Discord server linked in the description for the channel if you want to talk anime with other fans or reach me directly. Anyway, back to the video. In another mixture, it takes the "I'm gonna be a hero" elements of Deku, but places them on someone more like a toned-down Bakugo or a Kirishima. This prevents Shinra's outwardly heroic intentions from feeling stale or too similar to the decade's biggest anime. He's also a harsher look, again kind of like a Kirishima or Bakugo style look, which also kind of creates a contrast between what we usually think of to go with those hero elements and what we're actually seeing. His sharp teeth, forced smile, and more apathetic eyes all create a bit of contradiction from our ordinary idea of a hero and the man in front of us. There's also more to it than he shows to those around him. He simply states wanting to get this job with the Fire Force to be a hero, but he doesn't tell them why he wants to be a hero. Some of his last moments with his mom, or at least what we see of them, is her helping him play superhero as a kid, watching him pose, tying a cape on him, and making him feel strong. As a kid, he just wants to be a hero for his mom and brother, and be strong to protect them. And even though he was just a child, he sees their death as his failure to be a hero. So he devotes himself to making it real now. And although this is thought monologue to us, it's nice to see a hero career-seeking main character not wear their heart on their sleeve. He feels much more original in this way. Let's double back to his forced smile, though. He's forced to explain smiling awkwardly in his resume photo to introduce this, which he says is due to his face tightening up when nervous. This is goofy, and it's played pretty well for comedy when it comes up, but it's really just a setup for something more serious later. When we see the darkest bits of his backstory, he's stuck smiling. He doesn't look like a hero, and it's a bit unnerving. His own grandmother even calls this out, wondering why he has such a smile after what he did. It makes you feel bad for laughing at it earlier, and that's a very personally involving moment. It almost sends you on a bit of a guilt trip just for watching the anime be funny, and it really does pull you in and make you feel bad and sympathetic to this protagonist. And not just that, but it's also not a throwaway note. His smile doesn't just come up once and go away. It's an ever-persistent visual note in his character, even during these tense scenes, or even when he has to confront people of relatives to the people he just had to put to rest. It's a goofy element, but it's also played in this very serious, very personal and deep way, being ever persistent as a visual. He mentions not smiling genuinely since before the accident, leaving you to wonder if his smile in the final moments of the episode is his life brightening or just a continuation of the same. You'll also likely need to be ready for some of the less serious, more typical anime elements, for lack of a better term. These aren't strictly negative, but I like to bring them up because I always enjoy anime more without these scenes. There's this style of comedy you're seeing, which you could call cutaway, where the story halts for a second to get in a somewhat disconnected joke. Now, it is funny, and overall Fire Force's comedy moments hit rather solidly, but this will probably be more prevalent post-episode 1. And I'm feeling like this because of another scene in the first episode. A shower scene, pretty much right away. It's nothing egregious, it's not like a high school DxD level, but we get some boob callouts. You're gonna notice the boobs. It's not a bad thing, just bringing down the serious level in a bit of a more cheap way. Overall, I'm actually kind of mad at myself for not picking this one up earlier when some of my friends were telling me how good it was, because they were right, at least from what I've seen. Now, I've been wrong in first impressions before, but this one feels a little bit different because I'm not singling out a few elements that are good, but a lot of super strong elements and good production value. So I feel like this one is going to be strong all the way through, and I will definitely be watching it when I'm finished up with a few projects in the pipeline now. It doesn't feel like it's going to be as serious as the anime that I truly love, but it feels like it'll still have enough emotional pull even through those standard anime elements, for lack of a better term. Anyway, that's all I have to say about this one. So, usual plugs at the end of the episode that everyone probably skips, but here we go anyway. A link to my Discord that I mentioned earlier. If you like this video, like it so I know to make more like it, or let me know any other anime you want to see me do impressions of with the new season coming up, or just what you thought of the video. If you think I'm stupid, whatever it is, leave it in the comments down below so we can get engaged, because I do like talking to you and knowing how you all think about the anime or the video, or just what's on your minds. Also, consider subscribing to stick around for more great anime content like the videos on screen now with some finger guns. This is a terrible outro, so I'll just end it here, stop rambling, and say thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon. And of course, a massive truck pulls down the street right as I'm finishing.